In this video and the next one, I'm going to show how to create a document, create a master page that looks like this, has the text boxes like this, and then also a graphics frame like this. And we're going to actually create that on what's called a master page. That is a page template that we can then use as a template as a way to very quickly create many pages. When we get to the book project, we'll be using this same process to very quickly make a whole lot of pages and put a lot of content into a multiple page document. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a document that is this size, and we're going to use a letter size paper for this. That means we could print it out if we want, and we can just use a normal standard printer. So I'm going to go to InDesign and open that up. Oh, I already have one open. I'll go to the home screen. This is what yours will likely look like. You may have a couple files going on here. If not, that's okay, because we're actually going to be creating a new one right here. These are just recent documents. Now, right here, we can go up to the top, and we're going to create one that's actually meant to be printed. So we can go to Print, and over on the left, you can actually see that there's a standard size, which is letter. Here in the US, we use letter size. There are other sizes beyond that. As you can see, we've got A4. That is essentially the equivalent of a letter size, except it tends to be used in Europe. And so we in the US use letter size. Legal is a little bit longer. Tabloid is bigger even yet. It's 11 by 17 and all that. But we're going to use just this letter size right here. I'm going to start off at the top and go through these different sections here. The first thing is always put a name on your document. So I'm going to call this Cookbook Layout. Okay, and the width shows 51p0, and graphic designers tend to use a different way of measuring, which is the pica point system. And so in this case, we have a 51 picas and 0 points. There are 6 picas per inch and 12 points per pica. And so if you do the math there, it is 72 points in every inch. One reason you might do this is you'd want to very quickly and easily divide things and make things halves or thirds or a sixth or something like that. And this allows you to very quickly take inches and put it into a system that divides very evenly into those things. These picas tend to be used for page layout because they're slightly larger, and so we can divide that page into a number that, like 51 is not too big, it's not too small. Whereas if we get to the points, 612, it gets a little harder to kind of understand. But when we're talking about text itself, we tend to use points because the text tends to be fairly small. So in this case, I'm going to switch that to picas. We're going to see that right there. It is 8.5 by 11, but if we don't believe that, we can actually type it in. So 8.5 IN. And once you click out of this, it's actually going to convert. And so you can see that 8.5 inches convert automatically to 51p0. Okay. We're going to start off with the orientation being portrait. And then for the pages, we'll start with just a 1. And we can add pages later on. And so that's what we'll do kind of as it comes. For the columns, let's create just a few more. We're going to create 6. Again, easy to divide by 2, easy to divide by 3, and get a whole number, which is nice. And then we have what's called a gutter, and that's just the space between the columns. So if you've seen a newspaper or a magazine where there's text in between, or there's a space in between columns of text or images, that would be this right here. It's, by default, it's 1 pica, 1/6 of an inch. I think that's going to work for us. We are also going to, for this assignment, I'd like you to change this to 0.25 inches, which is also 1 pica, 6 points. And so 1p6 is another way we can type that in. Margins, as you know, is just the space around the outside of between the edge of the paper and where all of your content starts. And then we also have bleed and slug, and we really don't need to worry about this too much right now. I will say that a bleed is whenever you have a page, sometimes you want to have an image or sometimes different elements go all the way to the edge of the page. That's called a bleed. And we're not going to, but you can set that up. You'd have to talk to whoever's printing. And then the slug is an area that would allow you to put in some marks. You can also put in some text as well. We tend not to do that in this class, but once you become a graphic designer, that might be something that you do. It might also be something that you see if you end up being somebody that works in a print shop, and you'll get proofs and see what the graphic designer is looking for. Will communicate some information, so you can do that in that technical way. Okay, so we've got our file all created, and here we go. And by default, we actually see our page. If you haven't already, switch to Essentials Classic. And over here on the right, there should be a box that says Pages. We're going to go into that panel. And we've got that going on there, but if you can't see that, go to Window and Pages and just make sure there's a check mark there. So we've got our Pages panel right here, and it's divided into two different sections. We've got the master page portion and the page portion. Anything that's in the page portion is going to show up. Anything on the master page section may or may not. It depends on kind of a few different factors. But these are not pages. These are our page templates. These are the actual pages that will be printed. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to apply. So I have this one that's called None. And I want this first page, just so we can kind of see our page spread, to be blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag this over, and there's an outline that shows up, and that means that I'm going to override whatever master page is there, which it says A, so it's the A master right now, and I'm actually going to override that to None. And now there's nothing on this first page. And so first page, all good there. The other thing that I'm going to do is then go into, and I'm going to double click on my master pages. And here we go, we have our master page spread. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to match this. And I've kind of created some outlines around the boxes themselves, mostly just to show you. And I'll be creating those really quickly in this video. So I'll go back to InDesign here, and I'll create a text box. And so we've got our type tool right here, and it's as easy as clicking and dragging. It tends to want to snap to those columns, and that's good. The height for our purposes right now doesn't really matter, but again, we're working on the master page. One way I know that this is a master page is whenever I do not have it selected, all of our boxes will show up as dashed lines. And if I want to, I can actually type in here, and I'm going to leave myself a little note. Later on, we're actually going to get rid of the notes once we have our layout all set. But this is my recipe title, And so I'm just going to put in a little note right there. I'm not even going to change the font. We'll worry about that in a later video. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and try to match that layout. So I'll be bouncing back and forth. The next one is ingredients. So I'll take my type tool. I'm going to leave a little space. I'm going to try to estimate that. And I'm going to span those columns. What I mean by that is it's going to go across those two columns. And we use multiple columns because it looks more professional when things are seem to have an order, seem to have a proportion. Okay, so this is ingredients right there. The next one, I will try to line up with the top of that as well, and then create that. This one was my procedure right there. And then I'm taking a look again at this, and I'm seeing now that I have this box right here, and then there's an X through it. That's a different type. It's not a text box. That right there is an image frame. And so what I'm going to do is go back to InDesign, and I'm going to find my image frame tool. And what you can actually do is you can have multiple different shapes. You can even go to pen tool and create a unique shape for that. We're just going to use a rectangle for now. And again, I'm just going to kind of estimate the size of that image. There we go. So now I've got my graphics frame. That's where a picture is going to go. I'm going to actually jump ahead here. So I'm going to pause the recording, put in the rest of the pages, and I'll come back with the next thing I'll do is show you how to link all of these text boxes together. It's going to make our putting all of our stuff in a little bit easier. Okay, so I put in the rest of the boxes, and I put in little notes right here for my different sections. So I've got my recipe title, my ingredients, my procedure, recipe backstory, author's notes, additional information, and then a caption. One thing you're going to notice about this layout, and it's something that can be scary for, not scary, but not something that people tend to want to do when they're first designing, and that's leaving a little bit of space. And so it's okay if we have a little bit of space in our design. It can actually make things easier to read. It can separate things so we can see, the ingredients clearly are separate from the procedure, and visually will represent that by leaving some space. So I've actually created a little bit more than the layout originally, and that's okay. So if yours are not exactly the same as the ones we have that on here, that's pretty good. I would like you to still span those columns in an even way, and for the most part try to stick to the same columns. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is link all these text boxes in this order, because you will have a recipe that has all of these things in that order. Okay, so I'm going to start with recipe name, ingredients, procedure, recipe backstory, author's notes, spice level, and image caption. And this is fairly easy. I'm going to switch to my selection tool. I'm going to then select on my first text box, and down here at the right I can see that there's some handles that change the size. But then right above that we have another box right here, and what this does is it actually allows me to flow text from one to the other. And so I clicked there one time, I get a different icon. There's a link, there's a page, or a text box, and then it starts beginning to say the actual text. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the next one, which is ingredients. And you'll notice that ingredients popped up over there at the other one. And that's a good thing. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll go here, got recipe title, ingredients, procedure, clicking again, recipe backstory, linking again, author's notes, linking again, additional information, and then one more time for the image caption. And you can see all of our text kind of popped up to that top one. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to get all of that text to go in the right way. But first, last thing, I'm going to delete this text.